Welcome to a new season of Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily Taylor. I'm a mediator, developmental psychologist, conflict resolution teacher, and mom of 5. And just like you, I've had my fair share of conflict. Over time, I've realized conflict isn't something to fear. It's simply part of life. What matters is how we respond, and if we have the tools to handle it with confidence and care. And that's what this podcast is all about. In each episode, you'll hear me coach someone through a real conflict they're facing. You'll listen as they share their story, and I'll guide them towards solutions that align with their goals and values. Along the way, I'll point out skills and strategies you can use in your own life, whether at work, at home, or in your other relationships. So whether you've been with us since season 1 or you're brand new, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. Today I'm coaching Maya. For over 10 years, she's been dealing with different levels of estrangement from different family members. She was once distant from her mother, but they're on good terms now. However, there is still lingering tension between her and her grandparents. She feels like she's ready to start building bridges with them, but she's nervous and unsure how. We're going to explore her options. Maya, it's so great to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
What's the story that you've heard about why the estrangement happened in the first place?
So, as far as I know, my grandparents growing up were a little bit abusive to my mother and her siblings. And that, of course, created its own rift in their family. However, as they got older, the younger siblings felt like they weren't manipulative and they weren't abusive and things like that. However, my mom and her sister continued to really struggle with feeling manipulated. And my aunt specifically was left out of family things or asked to babysit while there were family functions going on by my other aunts and uncles. And there was some tension there. But as far as I know, the breaking point was my aunt, her husband, was diagnosed with cancer. And they were at the time renting a home from my grandparents. They also had just had a baby. They let them know, hey, we are going to be behind on this month's payment. And I found out later that my grandfather had had some financial trouble. He had made some bad investments. And so apparently around that time, of course, as perfectly as that turns out, whenever someone's going through something bad, someone else is also going through something bad, he was wanting to sell the property. But he didn't tell my aunt and uncle who were renting from them about that. Anyways, he kicked them out, and tension had already built up between my parents and my grandparents, just from different things. They just aren't truthful. They lie a lot, and it was frustrating to my parents, and they were protective, of course, of my aunt, who is my mom's younger sister. When that happened, my parents flew out and put them up in a place and tried to help them out because, I mean, they had a newborn baby, and her husband had cancer, was going through chemo, and they wanted to do what they could to help. And at that moment, my aunt completely cut them off. No address, no phone number, changed.
Cut the parents off.
Cut the parents, my grandparents off, yes.
Okay.
And my mom stood up for her and was kind of like, this is not okay. And as far as I know, my grandparents at that point were kind of like, how dare you choose her side? And my mom chose to step away after that from contact with them. And her younger siblings were kind of like, how dare you, and brought up basically every mistake that she could have or accusations of mistakes that she had made, my mom. And we're kind of like, you are a hypocrite and we don't like you. And so then they decided they didn't want to have a relationship with her.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're maybe tentatively considering re-engaging with your grandparents, but not knowing exactly how to keep yourself safe?
Yes.
And not experience kind of the same possible manipulation or abuse?
Yes, that's exactly right, yeah.
But I really want us to first focus on, what are you nervous about? Like, tell me why you wouldn't re-engage with them.
I think the best way to describe this is through an example that happened recently. So they reached out to me recently. They live close to me right now. And they asked to go to dinner, which is the first time that they've asked me that. And I said yes. I I talked to my parents about it, and my mom was like, it's your choice. And I told them that I was pretty busy, but I gave them multiple options for nights. And then they told my parents I said no, and that I didn't want to go. And that I wasn't happy to talk to them. I think there's multiple parts of it. One part of it is they don't acknowledge that they did anything wrong with my mom. They don't acknowledge that they lost a kid, like my aunt. And that there's like some sort of like protectiveness in me for these two women that I love and that are big parts of my life, that I just don't want to pretend like nothing happened. So that's my first hesitation. My second is I love people, you know. I wouldn't say I'm gullible, but I believe in the best in people. And just from that small text conversation, like that being manipulated, I just am nervous about what could be manipulated. Or if I would just get myself into an emotional or just bad situation in general.
Okay, so those are the fears. That's kind of like the pull away from the opportunity. What are the push like towards the opportunity factors? Like why would you choose to reengage?
Well, I thought about this a lot. Family's super important to me. And I believe that, you know, not everything's going to be solved just after we die. But, you know, like there are conflicts. We're still going to be family after this life. That's what I believe. And I've thought about a lot throughout my life. You know, you do feel that sense of brokenness in your family. And I just believe to my core that nothing is going to fix it except for working on it.
Doing the actual work of
Right.
reconciliation.
Right. It's complicated, though, because I'm not the one it happened to directly. And so how can I really do that? I'm not sure. As well, I'm just curious. Like, I think about family a lot. I think family is very important. I'm curious, you know, where I came from. From all of this, there's just this like hesitancy of even like my ancestors. I love family history, and I don't know anything about that side of the family, but I can't ask the people who would know anything. And I don't know, for me, that is a big reason.
Okay, friends, what I was just helping Maya do and what I want you to focus on is this. Review your push and pull factors. If mending a relationship feels risky, take a step back and take note of the things that are pulling you away from doing it and the things that are pushing you to do it. Our pull factors, or our fears, need to be properly understood so that we know what we're dealing with. Oftentimes, it's that reaching out that may feel risky, unsafe, or that it could somehow make things worse. When we let these factors guide our decision-making, we usually end up in a state of arrested development with our conflicts. But our push factors are often deeper, more abiding values. For Maya, it's a strong belief in the eternal nature of families. When the conflict is draining your energy or straining your relationships, your push factors can propel you into the first steps of mending a relationship. As I continue with Maya, think about your own conflicts and what your push and pull factors may be. Let's jump back in. In terms of, say, you reconnecting with your mom and becoming close to her, describe a little bit the series of things that you did with each other that created that closeness. Can you describe to me that process at all?
Yes. So we both went to therapy.
Yes, it's helpful.
It's very helpful. I think one time my therapist invited my parents to come with me to therapy because I brought up my parents quite a bit. And, you know, for me and my dad, it went poorly. But for me and my mom, I think she even expressed in therapy, she just never wanted to be like her mom. She just wanted to be better. And she kind of felt like she failed a little bit. And it was really sad to see that because, you know, I didn't understand that feeling. And the problem was I kind of felt like she had to a little bit. And so I couldn't, you know, we both kind of felt a little broken in that. And so something my therapist suggested was just, she was like, hey, like at the most basic level, you guys need to reconnect, you know, in some form or fashion. outside of conflict and just find some sort of neutral space. So something I started doing was I was a dancer and I got home really late most nights, like 10:30, 11 in high school. And I would go into her room and she'd still be awake. She's a night owl. And I would just kind of tell her what happened to me throughout the day. It was a safe subject, like this happened. I would never ask her for advice. Sometimes she would maybe insert a comment or two, but she didn't really want to talk about teenage drama either. So she would just listen, maybe we'd have a conversation about it, but mostly she just kind of let me tell her about things, And at first it was really hard and it felt really awkward. And then over time it became something I looked forward to, getting to spend that time with my mom, getting to tell her about my day, having someone also, it's nice to have someone to go to that will let you talk about your day. And she did. And I think both of us recognized that that was different than anything we'd had before.
So your therapist is the one who's suggesting this. You're both getting help, but you pick this neutral space, or at least this time. It sounds like this was a series of many days.
Yes.
Like, how long would you say?
That level of our relationship was probably like most of my junior year of high school.
So this is a lot of days.
Yeah.
This is a lot of nights.
Of days, yeah.
Interesting that you said that you wouldn't ask her for advice and you kind of kept it light.
Yeah.
And that was like at least an initial like changing of a pattern of interaction.
Yeah.
You've had a success through a series of like regular engagement, even not on a topic that's like the most central. It sounds like you created connection with her.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yes.
What I think sometimes is tricky is we do feel so much on behalf of others. Like you have already experienced to a certain extent the pain that your mother has gone through. Like you're a witness to it.
Yeah.
You haven't witnessed your grandparents, whatever they've been through, but your mom's. So re-engagement, you can feel like a tug of loyalty, especially if there has been physical abuse, other things that have gone on. We can think of a reconciliation. Sometimes I think we imagine more like, okay, I'm going to have this meeting and I'm going to go to this dinner and we're going to like hash it all out, right? Mm. And it's not that could never happen, but I think sometimes we imagine the big scenario as opposed to the series of like kind of like tactical moves to see if we can even approach the big thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so I'm just seeing you as someone who's had a success in another relationship that wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Where the uncertainty is addressed kind of like in a safe way. So, say like you had started to do like go to your mom's bedroom and she had like lashed out at you. My guess is those interchanges would have stopped. Like you would have stopped going to her room.
Yeah.
If there had been like a negative reaction, right?
Yeah.
Is there a scenario, just like your therapist was suggesting with your mom, is there a scenario where you could be safe to at least gain proximity to your grandparents so you could assess whether you want to take another step further and come back again?
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I'm sure there is.
Like, what to you is a safe situation?
I think something that has time boundaries.
Okay.
Time limits. Something that is not in either one of our personal spheres.
Okay, so kind of a neutral space?
Yeah, a neutral space. Yeah, I think that's a big two. Neutral space and a capped time.
Okay, friends, what I want you to think about now is how to build relationship success through small interactions. Maya shared the great example of how she slowly repaired the relationship with her mother through daily, low-stakes chats. Think about the conflicts you've resolved in your life. What small things led up to their resolution? Like I told Maya, it's rarely a single big dramatic moment that fixes everything. So take the small successes you've had in the past and find a way to model them for a current conflict you have. Think through the types of scenarios that would be most comfortable, like Maya and I just were. As you have small interactions, you'll become more comfortable with each other, let your guards down, and eventually open up. You'll likely start out feeling cautious about the interactions, but remember how this has worked for you in the past with other relationships, and let that assure you that you can do this. Let's get back to Maya.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It feels a little heavy sometimes, because I don't feel comfortable, or I've expressed it to my siblings. They're like, oh, great. Like, yeah, you do that, in this idea of thinking about reaching back out to them. It feels a little heavy to be the person who, and God, hopefully, but who will teach them or who will initiate this. I don't know if you've learned anything about, like, how does that load become a little lighter? Or
I think you mentioned it under your breath. There's a scripture, actually, I just think of, I'm a Christian, and there's a scripture, I think it's Isaiah, it says, you shall be the restorer of the breach. Having had my parents divorce and then both sets of grandparents divorce, I thought actually very carefully about those thoughts. Because it's so tender and I feel vulnerable, I've always had God be a part of my decision to engage or not engage, and to try to create a very specific scenario of safety for myself in case it doesn't work. Because there's always the possibility that someone may reject me. Sometimes it's even scarier to know, like, I'm curious and I want to engage with you, but if I engage with you and you reject me outright, I'm worried that might be even more painful than never knowing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's kind of, if you think about it, this scenario, that's kind of the crux of it, is like, I'm curious, I want to know, I know family is really important, but I have living witnesses that I've grown up with that tell me this is dangerous.
yeah,
So I'm like scared. So again, to take necessary risks in your life, for me, that's kind of like my faith story, right?
Yeah.
I don't engage in something dangerous without obviously thinking through it like we are, but then having some kind of spiritual backing to say, this is what I have confidence that this will be at least a good thing in terms of me learning. What do you think?
I love that. I think it's so easy to forget that part. I'm also Christian, and I think especially, I haven't gone into it in depth, but like you said, like, my family has not had the most simple relationship. And I have felt that I've had to go against what feels natural in the moment and kind of teach myself and maybe teach my parents how to come together, And I know that I've had moments where I felt very strong, like being so young and standing up to people you love and that you want to love you. It's not easy. And so I think I've definitely had experiences where the Lord has strengthened me and just helped me to know who I am in that moment,
What do you think you need to do right now to kind of figure out what you want to do in this situation? Like, is this a question of like, I'm going to do this? Or is this a question of like, I think I need to pray about this and, maybe reflect on what that scenario would look like? Mm-hmm. What kind of seems like the natural outflow of this conversation, kind of like next steps that you would want to take?
Yeah, I think from this end part of our conversation, I've just been reminded that the Lord has made it possible, in the past, and I do want to involve him more than this. It's funny because it's like one generation before my generation. Like, it's not my immediate family. It's funny that it feels slightly like less dramatic, if that makes sense. Like, it's almost like it's not that big of a deal. But it is to me, and I've expressed that the whole time.
But there's more of a buffer. Like, this
Yes.
isn't about your primary attachment. This is another layer beyond. Yes.
So I've almost forgotten, and I feel very led by God to have started this process in general, but I think I've forgotten to involve him in it as much as maybe I could or should. So yeah, I definitely do feel like I want to go and pray about it. Kind kind of maybe bring this scenario to him that we've come up with and see what that feels like. And maybe my goal has changed a little bit, you know. In my mind, I'd created a very specific scenario in which I'd feel comfortable talking to them, and I planned to talk about family history the whole time so that I could avoid any, you know, less comfortable subjects. But, you know, maybe this is still the same goal, but maybe my goal has changed to get to know them better, which feels scary. But I think it is important, you know, that is the still living generation that can tell me who they are. So,
Maya, thank you so much for being willing to come on the show and for sharing something, you know, really personal, but I'm hoping you're stepping away with something that's going to be helpful to you.
Thank you for having me. I do feel so much more confident in trying. So I'm very grateful.
All right, friends. Before we wrap things up, let's recap the skills we covered today. First, review your push and pull factors. It can feel risky to try and mend a broken relationship. So take stock of what's keeping you from doing so and what's motivating you to do so. Write them out if you need to. Ultimately, you want to clearly understand both your push and pull factors when facing important relational conflicts that involve risk. And you want to bring your fears into light. Second, build on previous relationship successes through small everyday interactions. Rome wasn't built in a day, so remember that mending most relationships takes time. Think of previous conflicts you've resolved with others and the small steps you took to get there. Make a plan for your current conflict and use your experience as a model. And finally, seek spiritual guidance. If you're a Christian like me and Maya, you can pray. Or if you come from a different religious practice or none at all, consider meditation or some other spiritual practice that resonates with you. Continue to consult trusted family and friends. But if your conflict has a spiritual dimension to you, seek spiritual guidance or confirmation of your plans. Thanks for joining me today. If there's someone in your life who might benefit from listening to this episode, please share it. Because, as I always say, it's not a question of if, but when we're going to experience conflict, and we do much better when we're prepared. The Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily Taylor is a BYU radio podcast. I'd love to connect with you on social media. Find me on Facebook and Instagram at Conflict Coach with Dr. Emily, where I'm sharing more ideas for working through conflict. And if you or someone you know has a conflict that you'd like to discuss on the podcast, send me an email to conflictcoach@byu.edu. And next time, I'll be coaching Clay as he considers whether he's willing to restart a relationship with a difficult sibling. I hope you'll join me.